Welcome to the SEC on CBS postgame report. Alabama survives 42-35, final home game of the season as they outlast Arkansas by 7 points. Bryce Young had himself a day. They win their 15th straight game over the Razorbacks. And what a day for the sophomore Bryce Young. Entered the day as the Heisman favorite. He went 31 of 40 for 561 yards and 5 touchdowns, setting a school record for the most passing yards in a single game. Also an FBS season high in passing yards with 561. With the win, Alabama clinches the SEC West. They will meet Georgia for the SEC championship in 2 weeks in Atlanta on December 4th. Heck of an effort by Arkansas. I mean, hanging in there. KJ Jefferson, Treylon Burks. I mean, this is a good football team. Like, Sam Pittman has built a very good program there in Arkansas, and a good season. Nothing to sneeze at. A 7-4 record. They'll close out next week against Missouri. But man, Alabama taking care of business, improved to 10-1. Up next, they'll face, of course, Auburn in the Iron Bowl. Let's get some reaction. Welcome to CBS Sports HQ college football analyst Barrett Sallee and Chip Patterson. Barrett, this game got interesting down the stretch there. A little concerning for Alabama. A 7-point win. Look, you want to, run up the score a little bit. You don't want to certainly lose this game because you can't afford it going into the Iron Bowl next week. But what are your takeaways from this game as Arkansas really tests Alabama?
Yeah, Alabama's had some, I wouldn't say mediocre linebacker play, but Christian Harris and Henry To'o, generally speaking, this year have not lived up to the expectations. And that's been a big reason why there's some frustration in Alabama with that defense. And that really was the problem today. Yeah, they made some tackles, but you saw KJ Jefferson cracking off 5, 6, 7 yards per carry. And it really confused these linebackers. That play action game, the way Kendall Briles orchestrated that offense using KJ Jefferson as a power rusher and as not only an efficient passer, but also stretching the field deep to Treylon Burks. It was really, really impressive. And it showed that Alabama, just from a talent standpoint and from a scheme standpoint, can't hold up maybe to some of these diverse offenses. So you're not going to get KJ Jefferson every single week. He's a unique challenge. But I think other teams, specifically teams that'll be in the playoff hunt, will look at this and say, okay, you run a bunch of zone read power, you can get to this Alabama Crimson Tide defense. And that's exactly what Arkansas did.
Barrett, I think that's a really good point. I just don't think you're going to see that with Stetson Bennett. I don't think you'd see that with JT Daniels. I think that while your concerns are valid when we go up against the playoff teams, I think that our immediate future, TJ Finley, TBD, but I think that Alabama has to think that what you saw offensively is the reason why you're hanging your hat on your chances to win an SEC championship. And in a day that started with C.J. Stroud wowing everyone with 6 first-half touchdown passes, only 2 incompletions, and everything that was built into that dominant Ohio State mint that happened from the Buckeyes against Michigan State. How about what we saw from Bryce Young, who is also right there with C.J. Stroud in the Heisman Trophy contention? Because when you go for more than 500 yards, when you execute the offense flawlessly, and when you continue to put the Crimson Tide in position to come up with answers when your defense lets you down, well, then that's the kind of stuff that has really evened this race. It feels like we went into the day thinking that the Heisman was wide open. It's just 2 quarterbacks, and they play for Ohio State and Alabama.
Yeah, Bryce Young was awesome in this game. Again, he set a school record for the most passing yards in a single game with 561. Most passing yards in a single game in SEC history. That belongs to KJ Costello last season from Mississippi State, beginning of the season. And then it wasn't really great for Mississippi State rest away. They had guys leave the team, and, well, this wasn't a good scene. But for KJ on that day, 623 against LSU. I remember that fondly. You're going to remember Bryce Young, 559, 561 here on this day as Alabama outlasts Arkansas. Let's get back out to Tuscaloosa, final home game of the season for the Tide. We welcome CBS Sports sideline reporter Jamie Erdahl. Jamie, you spoke with Nick Saban postgame. What did he have to say about how this one played out?
Now, naturally, he was happy with a win. A win is a win in the SEC West, but he was frustrated with a lot of what this team gave up against Arkansas. I know the guys just got done talking about this, but a lot of things for this Alabama defense to fix, and a little surprising to see that happen to an Alabama defense so deep into the season that they don't have some of these things shored up. But you can guarantee that Georgia's going to look at this tape, especially with them having a mobile quarterback as well in Stetson Bennett, and they're going to try to figure out what Arkansas was able to capitalize, and that is KJ Jefferson's ability to make this offense move with his own 2 feet. So Saban was frustrated, but things to fix. Sometimes the most dangerous Nick Saban is the one that he can go back and tinker with this defense, as he has 2 weeks ahead of the SEC championship now.
Well, as you know, he challenged his players for a subpar practice on Wednesday. Said they were getting into their feelings, not doing what they needed to do to be successful, sending a message saying, hey, we got to take care of business because Arkansas is just going to lay over and roll over for us at home. They know what's at stake. They know what's at stake for us. What does it say, though, about Bryce Young on a day when the defense gives up 35 points to have a day like he did?
Wow, it felt like this was the culmination of what Bryce Young has been showing us flashes of all season. He's had a lot of great games, but this was an entire game effort for him, and they needed every one of those completions and every one of those yards and touchdowns that he was able to notch for this offense. He is such an impressive young man. I think what I appreciated most about what he put out there today was the pass he made. He's on the move using his feet, and he sidearms it. It was almost a lateral pass across the field, but the way, and it turned into a touchdown. His ability to extend plays. I know he doesn't love to use his feet, but when he does, he becomes a much more dangerous quarterback and one that defenses cannot contain. So impressive. Such an impressive young. He's bright. He's appreciative. He makes this team go, and I just can't wait to see what he's able to turn into here at Alabama.
Looking like Patrick Mahomes on that play. He is a special kid indeed. Again, 31 of 40, 559 yards, 5 touchdowns, a school record for most passing yards in a single game. Jamie Erdahl joining us here post-game on CBS Sports HQ. Jamie, thank you.
Yep, thanks, Hakeem.
And the big takeaway here is that Alabama clinches the SEC West, and they are back in the SEC championship game. And that game is going to be awesome. Georgia, Alabama, December 4th in Atlanta on CBS. Meantime, 15-0 now against Arkansas under Nick Saban, averaging nearly 42 points per game. They take care of business. They do not cover the spread, but they take care of business and improve to 10-1. All right, back here with Barrett Sallee and Chip Patterson. You heard what Jamie said there. And Nick, of course, is happy with the win, but they did some things in this game that are a little questionable in terms of Alabama football. When you look at what Alabama did in this game, they get out of town. They're in town or in Tuscaloosa. They get out with a victory. What's the big takeaway, Barrett, for you as Alabama survives and, more importantly, gets to the Iron Bowl unblemished in terms of losing a game here?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of negatives that Nick Saban will point to because he likes to do that, and certainly in Auburn week and Iron Bowl week, he's going to try to motivate his players best he can. But I think the one thing that we need to talk about that may go under the radar a little bit, Brian Robinson rushed for 123 yards. And granted, he was the only player on that roster to gain more than 3 yards on the ground, but he broke the century mark, and that's important because the last time Alabama played an SEC opponent, the entire team managed just 6 rushing yards in an entire game against LSU, which isn't exactly the best defense in the country. So the fact that Brian Robinson was actually able to take some pressure off of Bryce Young and at least keep those safeties honest, I think helped Bryce Young set the record that he set and really let that offense click. You don't have to go out there and rush for 2 bills. That's not the way this Alabama offense is built. That's not the way Bill O'Brien wants to build it. But if you can go out there and rush for $123, that's going to help everybody around you. So while we're all going to praise Bryce Young and Jamison Williams and John Mechie III, and rightfully so, I think Brian Robinson's contribution today on the ground is a great sign for the Crimson Tide moving forward.
I thought it was a great John Mechie game. I'll go ahead and take that basic bait, Barrett. I will say that I will give that praise to the wide receivers because Jamison Williams, to me, has been my alpha here for this Alabama team in terms of just what I see breaking down the tape. It seems like he has been such a welcome addition and such a great move for him to be able to boost his own pro future and his NFL draft prospects. John Mechie, I got to say that maybe he's the forgotten star in this passing attack alongside of Bryce Young and the new flavor of Jamison Williams, because when you look at 14 targets from Bryce Young, he pulls down 10 of them for a team high 173 yards. And this is the big thing, Hakeem. None more than 33. So like Jamison Williams, a big splash player. He'll have the 79-yard score. He'll have the big yards that go a long way in boosting your stats. John Mechie was a workhorse. And we often think about workhorse in terms of the Alabama offense and being a running back and being your Derrick Henry type. And Brian Robinson did a good job of establishing the run, and that does make life so much easier on the passing game. But I think there was a workmanlike performance from Mechie. I thought he did a fantastic job of being able to be a possession receiver and keep drives alive. He played a big role in Bryce Young's record-setting day.
Barrett, how does this team, and again, we're talking about 18, 19, 21-year-old kids, how do they not look ahead to the SEC championship game? And I get it. They have Nick Saban as their head coach. He will keep them under control. But you look at Auburn, and look, this game is massive. Auburn-Alabama is one of the biggest rivalries in all of sports, not just college football. But there's no Bo Nix in this game. How do they keep under control against a team like Auburn, who's trying to upset the season for Alabama and send them into the SEC championship with 2 losses?
Well, Hakeem, I grew up in an Auburn house. I went to Auburn. I worked at Auburn. And I can tell you what, it doesn't matter what Alabama's doing 2 weeks from now. It doesn't matter what Auburn's doing 2 weeks from now. It doesn't matter what either team is doing 8 days from now. What only matters to both of those squads is what happens in those 60 minutes between the white lines at Jordan-Hare Stadium. So I don't think there's any chance that Alabama's players look forward. I think Nick Saban and his staff will look at that roster and say, you know what week this is, don't you? They don't have to say anything more, because that is, like you said, the biggest rivalry, I think, in all of sports. And for those people in that state, and a lot of these players are from the state of Alabama, they understand that, going to the college football playoffs is great. Winning an SEC title is great. Winning the state title matters most in that state, and those players know it.
Yeah, without a doubt. This is not a 1-week rivalry. This is a 12-month rivalry. It is one of the best rivalries in all of sports, not college football, sports with a capital S. And I do think that when we go into this week, it's very easy, especially for any veterans that are on this Alabama team. I know we've had a ton of turnover. We've lost a lot of, NFL talent to the next level, but anyone who remembers 2019 on this roster is going to want to go in with a little bit of hunger to go and get a victory and be able to, punch this ticket all the way to stay in college football playoff contention. And heck, forget getting distracted by the SEC West being clinched. You've still got 1 loss, and you are still trying to hang on to your college football playoff position. I mean, they put that silly show on national television on Tuesday nights. I'm sure that all the players watch it. They know exactly where they sit, not just in the conference standings, but in the college football playoff selection committee rankings.
Okay, so we love to look ahead, and we love rankings, and we love to say what if, and we love the hypotheticals. So the hypothetical here, Alabama goes to Jordan-Hare, takes care of business, beats Auburn, goes to the SEC championship, and then loses to Georgia, and then they have 2 losses. And let's say Oklahoma wins the Big 12, Cincinnati runs the table. There's never been a 2-loss team in the college football playoff. But Alabama's pretty good. What are we doing?
I think Oregon-Utah is going to tell us everything. It's going to start with Saturday night. Then, of course, we've got the Pac-12 championship game where I anticipate it will be Oregon and Utah meeting once again. I think that the Pac-12 is the biggest sort of like pivot move in what happens to a potential 2-loss Alabama and for Cincinnati. I think that the Big 12 could really be in trouble. I understand that Oklahoma was able to win, and that was very good for the Sooners to be able to do so against Iowa State. But that 7-point victory against the Cyclones did not do enough to inspire me to be able to do what we've been doing for so long, which is just to say, and Oklahoma wins out and wins the Big 12, because that's what they do under Lincoln Riley. I just don't think the Sooners have been as consistent as they have been other years when they won the Big 12 championship, for us to just assume that they're going to win Bedlam, for us to just assume that they're going to be able to win the Big 12 championship. I think of all of our assumptions that we're making when we do these college football playoff hypotheticals, I think we need to start treating the Big 12 a little bit more like the ACC.
Yeah, I agree about that. But, Chip, you didn't mention, I think, one of the more important teams in this, because Alabama will not be cheering for old Notre Dame. And that's the one I think they need to worry about, because Notre Dame right now, they're clicking. Now, granted, Georgia Tech, but Notre Dame has slowly but surely become a very dangerous team with a pretty darn good offense. And right now, if you're going to compare the resumes of potentially what we said in this situation would be a 2-loss SEC West champion that loses to Georgia in the SEC championship game, well, where are the signature wins for that Alabama team? It would be today against Arkansas, and it would be Ole Miss. Those are pretty solid. There's no doubt about that. But are those signature wins more important than Notre Dame potentially having one fewer loss and moving into a spot to be in the playoff maybe as soon as next week? I think right now, yeah, Alabama is going to go into Atlanta. They're going to have a chance to win and get in. I think we all know that. But if they lose, it's going to take a lot more than just a few dominoes to fall. And I think the one they really, really have to worry about in that scenario is Notre Dame.
And then what if Alabama wins the SEC championship? And then it's
that's easy.
Then it's easy.
Then it's easy.
Yeah,
it's just 2.
Exactly. Then it's easy. It's some. So who's number 1 then? Does Georgia stay number 1 if they lose the SEC championship?
Ohio State.
Yeah, Ohio State.
Wow.
Ohio
State. Okay.
Or Oregon.
If the Ohio State
Oregon
that we saw today, Hakeem, yeah, if they take care of business against Michigan, and if they go and they win the Big Ten championship, I think Ohio State might end up holding that number 1 spot over Alabama. But, man, that Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, I mean, let's be honest, when we're seeding them, we're probably also taking matchups into consideration and trying to avoid that rematch, right? I mean, if we've got Alabama and Georgia in the college football playoff and they just played in the SEC championship game, our numbers aren't going to quite be able to hold up to test because we're trying to avoid the rematch.
Yeah, because that's what could happen, right? If you guys say Ohio State's 1, Oregon's 4, so then we have a rematch there, and then we have Georgia and Alabama in a rematch, sign me up.
They won't do that.
I know.
They won't do it, though.
I know, but it would be fun, though. It would be a lot of fun. It would be a lot of fun. Meantime,
Alabama. It would be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Alabama has had a lot of fun playing Arkansas. It was a test today. It was a test today for sure. They have now won 15 straight against Arkansas under Nick Saban. And here's a look at their schedule. They only lost 1 time to Texas A&M on a field goal. And here they are looking to go to 11-1 as they face Auburn on the road, Jordan-Hare next weekend on CBS. And then the SEC championship, the game of the year looming in Atlanta.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.